All right, it says that we are live. What a beautiful thing. I said 1 o'clock today. It's 1:33. My apologies for my tardiness and lateness. You already know. Duty calls. And then when I actually came to the computer after I had to do my mommy business, um, I had to shut the whole down. So then that was a whole nother process. So we're here giving thanks to the Most High for another day and another opportunity to take a moment to learn a little more about our history and a little understanding. If you're listening to this Lev project, and if you have been listening to it, and if you have benefited from it, just feel free to pass it along because I find that sticking on one subject for so long sometimes is different unless we're like in quote traditional school setting, especially sticking on one subject but just not going around the mulberry bush on it, but actually being edified in that subject collectively. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it's not being done, but it's rare. And I think those who tune in day after day, week after week, may the Most High continue to bless you for your desire to edify yourself and by extension, your community, and further the efforts that everyone is speaking about. After you get a plan, they say plan your work and then work your plan. You know what I'm saying? So you have to after you get the plan, you have to implement the plan. And true progress for me, there's no shortcuts. There are no shortcuts. There's no way that we cut around this information or not give attention to it, not pay attention to it, but yet we want to reap the results or the benefits of having processed, learned, grown, and healed from this traumatic pain. That's like unrealistic. So I'm just thankful for those. I know it's not for everybody, because it's the hype is not there. This is research. Research is exciting at one point if you have a theory or if you have some kind of, and oftentimes people go off researching in that mode, and I'm just talking for a little bit till we get I know I posted it up and shared it, so oftentimes we get live interaction. But sometimes people go into research because they have a theory or they have a hypothesis and they want to prove that hypothesis. And I think I said this before, you go in and you're already skewed to a certain degree because you already know what you're looking for. And now you're just looking for information to substantiate what you already hypothesized. But when we research and just read it for what it says, we are allowing so many more possibilities, things that we may never have even thought about when we don't constrain it to, I only want to see where master was beating the slave. You know what I mean? When you constrain it, when you put it in that tight box, you don't see everything else that colors this entire institution of the transatlantic massacre, the transatlantic, atrocity, against, like they say, wars against humanity to the degree. So once again, I just want to say thank you everybody for tuning in continually, and definitely if you value it, share it. I am going to read the day portion. We haven't, I was trying to juggle, then I was like, I threw up too many balls at the same time because what was I going to say? Yeah, because we haven't been able to, there's so much stuff been going on at night that usually we get into 30 years in chains. No, not 30 years in chains. 30 years a slave. And so we're going to definitely get back to that. Actually, tonight we can do some reading from that passage as well tonight. But rightfully, I started the book and remember that it was Women's History Month. And so this is why I'm making an extra effort to get it in. So let me go ahead and get started. Miss Julia Frazier is her name. Again, this book have males and females. Like I said, the males have very interesting things to share as well. But in light of women's history, I wanted to share the voices of the female enslaved persons or ex-enslaved. So Miss Julia Frazier, and the link for the book is in the box or in the inbox. Julia Frazier, born 1854, April 20th, 1937 is the time of the interview. She says, I was 83 the 20th of last February, born in 1854. You just live close to God and honor your father and your mother, and you'll live just as long as I live. So she's giving advice right out the box. Out the box, she's giving you the fourth commandment about, and the first commandment of how she lived so long. It says, I was 11 before I learned my ABCs, and I was 17 before I could write. I was born a slave. My master was a good man. However, he was Mr. Lewis A. Boggs of Livingston District, Spotsylvania County. Did I have any brothers and sisters? Yeah, just ask me how many, she says. I had 16. There are only 3 living now out of that number. My mother was a house slave. She did the churning and all the sewing. Even after the war, they got her to do the sewing. There wasn't any beating. My master wouldn't allow any. Old overseer tried to be mean. Slaves got hold of him once and slung him real good, and they didn't have no more trouble out of him. So the slaves put the overseer in check, she says. We had to work from sun to sun, sun up to sundown. At night, you could have meetings. Colored folks went to the white churches, couldn't have colored churches. I tried, or I traveled quite a lot, of course. That was after the war. We didn't know much about the war. We could see the balloons up in the sky, and that was about all. They were signals to tell the white folks Yankees was coming. We was afraid of them, hid in the cabin. After the war started and the Yankees come, my uncle ran away. Long while after, when I was way up north working, I come back here for a visit, and I got a letter from him. He was living in Springfield, Ohio. His name was changed to Cooper. I went right out to visit him. Right after emancipation, father brought me and my sisters to Fredericksburg and put us in service of working for white folks. It was about 20 some odd miles. I fell in the water crossing a creek on a long bridge. Never will forget, she says. Father put me to work for, she says, a nigger trader. He was George Aller, man cursed with every breath he took. Had a saint for a wife. He couldn't help it, just natural with him. One day he told me, by God, you going down and get so and so out of the closet. His son was a doctor, and I didn't know there was anything in the closet. I opened the door, and a skeleton was hanging in there, just a shaking. I let out a whoop and fell right out. Did he laugh? Biggest joke he had in a long time. After that, I worked in service everywhere. Sometimes I quit and go on my own and sell books. I sold books for all the big disasters and wars, made good money. I've been to St. Louis, Ohio, Massachusetts, and thousands of other places, I reckon. So she was an entrepreneur too up in there. She's like, yo, forget this. I'm about to, sell books. I remember not too long ago, people used to walk and sell encyclopedias, but now with the internet, we don't really see that much. It says, Pappy and Ma both lived on the same plantation, which oftentimes wasn't that normal as we're reading. Ma was married on her 16th birthday and has 16 children. That's a lot for one uterus. There was long rows of tenant houses on the place, and Sundays the slaves would get together and would sing and have a big time. They had parties on holidays, Easter, Christmas, and Whitsun, whatever Whitsun is. We would have to look that up, whoever's out there. What is Whitsun? Whitsun. On them days, we would play ring plays, jump rope and dance. Then night we'd play Jumba. The girls got new dresses twice a year, but old mistress used to give us secondhand clothes. Like I said, as we're reading this and we're looking at the conditions and the desires that would have burned within your mind and your heart and your soul, and the imprint that it would have left, and the importance that you would have been extending to your children. This mother in particular has 16, only 4 living. And we look at the things, even today, that we spend most of our money on in the quote Black community. You can look up some of their statistics, the European statistics nonetheless, and see that these are the things that, you know, you would buy a $500 purse or a $400 purse before you pay your light bill. You would buy $200-300 sneakers and then say, you know, you don't have a job. So these are the things that affected our people in on a mental and emotional level that compromises certain decision-making skills. And so I noticed that many of the enslaved people keep noting, and they may be asking her the question, how many times a year? So only 2 times a year, they got 2 new dresses, or new dresses twice a year. And others say that it's in the summer and the winter, a summer dress and a winter dress. So they didn't, you know, and many didn't have shoes. And if they did, it wasn't very comfortable. So again, when they began to have the opportunity, as we could even see today, you know, to get a club fit, you know, people would spend the baby diaper money. But anywho, my mom was cook and used to clean. I like dusting part best because I could get my hands on the books and the pictures that old master had spread out all over his reading room. Old missus used to watch me most times to see that I didn't open no books, because ignorance was bliss in their estimation. They could keep you subjected if you were ignorant. And the same goes for today. It's just a different methodology of keeping you in such a state. Sometimes she would close up all the books and put them on the shelf so I couldn't see them. But Mars never liked her messing with his things. There was one book that I was crazy about. Didn't know nothing of what it was about, but it had a lot of pictures, engines and kings and queens with wreaths on their head. Used to fly to that book and hold it open at the pictures whilst I dust with the other hand. One day, while in the reading room, I heard a step coming from the kitchen. For I could move the door, sorry about that, open, and someone caught in. Thought sure it was Mrs., but it was Massa. He looked at me and saw what I was doing, but he never said nothing. I closed the book up and put it back in place. Was scared for many a day that I was going to get a hiding, but guess he never told Mrs. After all. Was a long time before I touched any more books. And I was, you know, reading was illegal. Pen and paper was contraband. And so lashes 30 and 9 oftentimes for a slave caught reading. It was ridiculous. So again, another ingrained thought process of, especially becomes is at the tail end of slavery, where it became more to the forefront of a prohibition on reading, that right up out of it, everyone flocked, or a lot of the people flocked to education as the answer, because this was what was held, as well as freedom, away. And so we've also read that one of the elders were complaining that they thought education alone, or the Europeans' definition of education alone, was what was going to redeem them as a people. And she said, in her estimation, that is not necessarily correct. But let me continue. One day, Charlie saw old Massa coming home with a keg of whiskey on his old mule. Cutting across the plowed field, the old mule slipped and Mars come tumbling off. Mars didn't know Charlie saw him, and Charlie didn't say nothing. But soon after, the visitor come and Mars called Charlie to the house to show off what he knew. Mars say, "How come here, Charlie, and sing some rhymes for Mr. Henson." Always been their form of entertainment. Always been the joke, always been the jester in this environment. And, you know, sometimes you would get a little pay. This is the equivalent of the entertainer, the in-house entertainer. "Don't know no new ones, Master," Charlie answered. So he's calling Charlie to show up for his guest, Mr. Henson. "Come on, you black rascal. Give me a rhyme for my company." One he ain't heard. So Charlie say, "All right, Master. I'll give you a new one if you promise not to whoop me." It says Master promised, and then Charlie sung the rhyme he done made up in his head about Master. So remember earlier he's saying that Master came home with the keg of whiskey on the mule, and the mule slipped and the Master fell off. So Charlie makes up the rhyme, says, "Jackass reared, jackass pitch, thrown old Master in the ditch. Well, Master got mad as a hornet, but he didn't whoop Charlie, not that time anyway. And Charlie don't, used to set the flow to that their song. So set the floor, we remember it's the DJ when they would have their parties on the Saturday night. So Charlie was the DJ, and they used to be rhyming this song. So mind you, never would sing it when Massa was around, but when he wasn't, we'll sing all around the cabin singing by how all Massa fell off the mule's back. Charlie had a bunch of verses. Jackass stamped and jackass neighed, throwed old Massa in his head. Don't recollect all that smart slave made up, but everybody show bust the sides laughing when Charlie sung the last verse. Jackass stamped, jackass humped, Massa hear you slave, you gonna get whooped. So basically he's saying if he hears you singing or mocking him with this song, you'll be in trouble. So Charlie was an old school rapper. It says there was an old man who would answer the preacher every Sunday meeting. He made so much noise, old Massa said, John, if you stop making noise, if you stop making that noise in church, I'll give you a new pair of boots. So he's bribing him to stop doing the hallelujah and the carrying on and the carrying on. So he says, John said, I'll try, Massa. The next meeting, he tried and tried to be quiet so he could get his new boots. But the spirit got him and he yelled out, glory be to God. Boots or no boots, glory be to God. And that's how she ended her thing. She gave glory to the Most High. She started off by giving glory to the Creator, Miss Julia Frazier, saying that she just lived close to God. She called God and honor your father and your mother, and you'll live long. And she ended it in the same token. So it'll be safe to assume that spirituality, or that which she understood about spirituality, was at the forefront of her mind and her thoughts. So that was very interesting. Massa done got thrown off the donkey in the ditch and bust his head. Again, the thought process oftentimes, and I'm going to read two more, of the European, and I read this in another book. I think that one is by Francis and Campbell, and it's a Georgia, the notes of a Georgia plantation. I have to get the exact title, but they wanted to deal with the enslaved as though they were children. And they wanted to, and they projected the thought process to keep grown people in a perpetual state of servitude by diminishing their thought cognitive functioning or their ability to reason, and have them ignorant as a child. And this was the way, and this is why they didn't want you to read. This is why they didn't want you, because they didn't want you to operate on equal footing. And in able to do that, I had to manipulate, or they had to manipulate how you saw the world. And because they are the only ones providing food, clothing, and shelter for you, in their estimation, if you go out there, you won't survive. And just like a child, when they're in that vulnerable state, they depend wholly on the parent or the caregiver. This is why I keep saying that over the time, it came to me that this was, if you want to best understand the effects of slavery, epigenetically, as well as on so many different levels. For me, it's a domestic abuse situation. And when you begin to study domestic abuse, because this is a parent to caregiver, or caregiver to infant or child narrative, and this is by their own admission, that this is the state of the slave to the master, total dependency for everything. If he didn't give it to you, where did you get it from? You had to be accountable. If you were grown and you had children, you still had to be accountable to them. You had to ask them, can you marry? You had to, and it wasn't even really marry. It was pseudo marriages that they were doing, because they had ultimate control over that too. They could break it up if they wanted to. So again, for me, in the healing process, if you look at it as a domestic abuse, because we see mental abuse, we see emotional abuse taking place, we see physical abuse, we see threats of whipping. This is, so look at it in that context, and we will see that traumatically, the bond, even though they were oppressing and abusive, there was a bond there because you associated this individual or this system with your sustenance. And it still, it still creeps over in today. If you don't depend on the system, or if the system is not sustaining you and you're so-called off the grid, everybody's looking at you like, how are you surviving? You understand what I'm saying? So, but I'll continue. Miss Georgina Gibbs is her name, born 1849. This interview is January 15th, 1937. Miss Georgina Gibbs says, Mrs. Georgina Gibbs, an ex-slave, resided at 707 Lindsay Avenue, Portsmouth, Virginia. The old lady marveled at the great chance that has been made in the clothing, or the great change that has been made in the clothing, habits, and living conditions of Negroes since she was a child. One moment. So she's marveling at and this is the base, by the way. This is the base needs. Like they call it in your root system. This is your connection with survival. Food, clothes, shelter. That's the base. This is what we as a people, our foreparents, our ancestors were lacking greatly. Just survival. So she says that she's greatly marveled at the change that and the habits and living conditions of the Negro since she was a child. She described the clothing of the slaves in a calm manner. All of the cloth during slavery time was made on the loom. My master had 3 slaves who worked in the loom house. After the cloth was made, and master sent it over town to a white woman who made it in clothes. He had to knit all our stockings and gloves, or we had to knit it. We plat blades of wheat to make us bonnets. We had to wear wooden bottom shoes. There weren't no stores, so we growed everything we ate, and we'd make everything we wear. Now imagine that. You know what I mean? Everything you eat and everything you wear has to come from where you are, because there wasn't in her retelling at that point. You couldn't go to Macy's. Very interesting. It says we had a washing room. There was 5 women who done the washing and ironing. They had to make the soap. That was done by letting water drip over oak ashes. This made oak ash lye, and this was used in making soap. Very interesting. After the clothes had soaked in this lye soap and water, they put the clothes on tables, beat them till they was white. Master give us huts to live in. The beds was made of long boards that was nailed to the wall. The mattress was stuffed with straw and pine tags. The only light we had was from the fireplace. We didn't use no matches. Instead, we strike a rock on a piece of steel, and we'd let the sparks fly on some cotton. Imagine that. It says, my master had about 500 slaves. So this is a big, huge plantation here. And oftentimes you get different narratives from if it's a big plantation to if it's a small plantation and the way in which they manage it. So she says where she was, it was 500 slaves. He'd never sell none of his slaves, but he'd always buy more. That keeps the slaves from marrying in their families. When you're married, you had to jump over a broom 3 times. That was the license. If master seen 2 slaves together too much, he would marry them. It didn't make no difference of if you wouldn't but 14 years old. So there was no age of consent. It was based on their discretion, because they, as we said before, handled the children like they were theirs. Work began at sunrise and lasted till sundown. When I was 8 years old, I started working in the field with 2 paddles to keep the crows from eating the crops. We had a half a day off on Sunday, but you weren't allowed to visit. Sometimes the men slaves would put logs in their beds and they cover them up. Then they go out. And you would see, don't you see that stuff on some of these movies where they put the billows? So she's saying they would put the logs. Master would see the logs and think they was the slaves. My father told me there was once a master who sold a woman and her son. Many years after this, the woman married. One day when she was washing her husband's back, I think I was talking about this yesterday or the day before, but this is the story right here. Her name is Georgina Gibbs. She got this from her father. One day when she was washing her husband's back, she seen a scar on his back. The woman remembered the scar. It was the scar her master had put on her son. Of course, they didn't stay married, but the woman wouldn't ever let her son leave. So how wild is that? the breaking up of the families, the sending away. You understand what I'm saying? The not realizing that you're attracted, and you're attracted to the individual, but not for the reason you think. And it ends up being your brother, it ends up being, in this case, his mother, it ends up being somebody's father. It's some real wild stuff that really happened that, you know, calmly, we need to comb this stuff through. She says superstitions, because they always had a lot of superstitions, toned by Georgina Gibbs. So we got to understand what is superstitious, what is based in truth, what is just, heebie-jeebie stuff. So here's some of the stuff she's bringing from what they would say amongst each other. If a dog turns on his back and howls, it's a sign of death. If you drop a dish rag on the floor and it's spread out, it's a sign that a hungry woman is going to come to your house. If the rag don't spread out, then a hungry man is coming. If a black cat crosses your path going to the right, is good luck. And if the cat goes to the left, it's bad luck. So they're looking for all of these omens, all of these things. It says number 4, if a girl walks around with one shoe and one off and one on, she'll stay single as many years as the number of steps she taken. And let me just say, Caribbean people say this thing too about the one shoe on. They say, don't try on one for the shoes. And it's like, you go to the store, you don't want to take off both your shoes. Don't try on one for the shoes. I've heard this. I haven't heard about the dish rag, but I've heard about a knife. If a knife goes on the counter and it stands up on its back, it means you're having a visitor. All of this stuff. But let me continue. It says, she goes on. It says, sadly, only worked half a day, and the slaves would carry on because they was going to celebrate that night. Old Charlie Snips was the lead man, and he was the biggest cut up in the quarters. We'd all be hoeing perpetrators long behind us. Not hoeing like that, hoeing in the field. It's funny how they still use these terminologies, and they've taken on all new meaning. Charlie and he would be prancing and singing tunes for us to chop by. This the song Charlie used to sing on Saturdays, or I guess Saturdays. Going to the ball, feet did a diddle. Going to the ball, feet did a diddle. Who's going to the ball? Feet did a diddle. Who's going to the ball? Feet did a diddle. Gonna wear a ride gown, feet did a diddle. I can't with Charlie. Wear a ride gown, feet did a diddle. Gonna wear a velvet coat, feet did a diddle. And of course, I probably didn't do Charlie any justice. The way he sung it, he probably got all into it. He's probably over there like Jodeci, you know what I mean? Breaking it down, and keep it up, putting it in words and kicking the clouds in steps. See, I told you he was breaking it down. And sometimes they take it up all over the field. Just a feet did a diddle and a stepping, high and a chopping, right in tune. All overseers was named Barnes, as he would yell and cuss and lash the slaves near him with his cowhide. But he couldn't stop all them slaves from feeling good, because they gonna set the flow that night. So they was like, yeah, boy, we going to the clubs tonight. We gonna fig diddle diddle, and they didn't, it's funny. It's like, they didn't want to see you in other narratives. They didn't want to see you sad. This is the overseers. They didn't, or the overseers and the masters. They didn't want to see you sad, but you couldn't be too happy. You couldn't be too joyful either. So your moods, you're singing and someone is lashing you, even though you're singing and it's keeping your mind off of the work that you're doing. And then they're going to turn around and lash you because they don't want you singing. It's a very, like I said, abusive domestic environment, because when I say domestic, I mean, this is where they live. This is where you eat. This is where you work. So it was a very abusive domestic environment, and in which we see that nothing that you can really do would appease them. You understand? Because of their indifference, because they're knowing that they're exacting your labor. We have to understand how conscience works. And I'm going to go, and we probably do, to Mrs. Candace Goodwin. But conscience is a thing. We have it. We can suppress it. We can sear it, but it still exists. You understand? And oftentimes we have to tell ourselves lies. And so it is my estimation that these oppressors had to lie to themselves. They had to tell them that like we read in other narratives, you really don't feel pain. They had to tell themselves that you don't really love your family like the European loves their family. They had to tell themselves that this is good for you. They had to tell themselves that you're not human, you're subhuman, you're a different class. All of these lies, we're thinking necessarily that they were telling us, but the first person they had to tell was themselves, because this is the only way that they were able to justify the behavior. And this was the justification. And so if you're oppressing somebody and that person is joyful, you're going to want to stomp that out, because you're supposed to be feeling pain. You're supposed to be feeling whatever you're feeling. So I just find it just so interesting how she says that he's singing and all of them are singing, and this overseer is wanting to beat them, not because they're not working, but because they're singing and they're feeling good, because they're about to hit the club. You know what I mean? They talk about hitting the club. That's nothing new. He said they're about to set the flow. So when somebody say they're going to set the flow, you already know. They're going to have the DJ back there playing the fiddle and doing their thing. Mrs. Candace Goodwin, 1857. And this is the last one. And then we'll reconvene. I got to get in this 30 years a slave from bondage to freedom a little bit later on. It says, I ain't know exactly how old I was, but I born for the war. Born over yonder at Seaview, on old Master Scott's plantation. It wasn't far from here. Yes, reckon I about 6 years old when the Yankees come. Just a little thing, you know. And then they say some lines were missing. And then she says, her white people or my white people, they good to me. That sounds like a line from today. Because they gets mad with you, but they don't beat none. Oh, just act like it. So they like threaten, if you don't do this, I'm gonna do this, but they never laid hands on them. She's saying, so in her estimation, again, remember, it's all relative. What good is as relation to if you beat, if you abuse, and if you feed. It says, why I was just like the children. I played with them, ate with them, and slept with them. I kinda chillish, I reckon, had my own way. My mama, she work in the quarter kitchen. She ain't had to work hard like some. Had it kind of easy too. Just like I tells you, I always had my way. I gets what I want. And if they don't give me to me, I just take it. So Mrs. Candace Goodwin, let me just continue. No, never had to work in them days, except in nursing the babies. 'Twas just like play. 'Twas no work. Or it wasn't work, she said. Used to go over to Nottington to play, go along with Miss Chillin. I likes to go over there because they has good jam and biscuits. And if they come give me none, or if they don't give me none, I just take some. They don't do nothing, just say, take your hand out that plate. But I got what I wants then. And when children used to have a time round old Mrs. place, and all us children used to get together and go in the woods to play. Yes, the white and the blacks uns too. The great big white boys used to long with us too. Know how we play? We take the brown pine needles and make houses out of them, and then make grass out of the green ones. Then we go over to Mrs. Dairy and steal anything we want and take it to our houses in the woods. Them was good old times, I tell you, honey. So she's like, yeah, she was the gangster, Miss Candace Goodwin, you know what I mean? Just running up on people like, yo, let me get some of that biscuit with jam and just snatch it. Okay. Tell you what I used to do. I used to play pranks on old Master Scott. I was a regular little devil, she says. Come night, everybody sit round a big fireplace in the living room. Soon it get kind of late. Master get up out of his chair to wind up the clock. I gets in his chair right easy and quick sneak his chair from under him. And when he finished the clock, we set smack on the floor. He set smack on the floor. Then he say, doggone you little cannon, I gonna switch you. I just fly out the room. Wasn't scared though, because I know Master wasn't gonna do nothing to me. What I know about whooping? Well, I ain't had a whooping in my life. But I hear tell how the whoopings, how they whips them though. They used to take that cowhide and cut it till they blacks bleed. Some just like to see the blood run down. Better not cry neither, she says. make you holler, oh pray, oh pray. Couldn't say nothing else. But Master Scott never had none that kind of stuff on his place. He said it wasn't right. Didn't allow no patty rollers round either. Say they treacherous. Master Nottingham, he never had them on his place either. He didn't never strict one of his Negroes or niggas, she said. Nobody else better not neither. So she's saying, this is like the second narrative, third narrative. They're saying they're persons of whom enslaved them did not they didn't agree with the capital punishment. They didn't chastise through whipping. Honey, I tell you, I grow just as good as any child in this here country. Oh, Mrs. Scott, give me good clothes, because I didn't get them more than twice a year. Again, another witness to twice a year. But they's good when I get some. She give me Sis's dresses, another witness to hand me down. Sis's one of Mrs. Little girls, and the white children, they learned me to read too, because the white folks didn't want you to learn. And members, just as clear as yesterday, how one of them children learned me how to read comprehensively, or she says comprehensibility. Though I something then, I can read the Bible and a little now, but I can't write, never learned to write. So the hand-me-downs, again, what is the psychological effects of always getting hand-me-downs during this space and time, and watching someone else have, of another race that oppressed you, so-called race, have certain things that you coveted to a certain degree, that was glorious, or that was splendid and it was beautiful. So when you have your opportunity, what you're going to do, you're going to go for that which you've always wanted. And we see that today where some of these designers say, I didn't design my clothes. This is what I've heard. I didn't design my clothes for those Negroes. I believe Tommy Hilfiger was one of them. And the man, what's his name? I didn't even know who he really was. Michael Kors, I think his name is, with the purse, saying he didn't design his purse for Negroes to be putting their weaves and stuff in. But again, because of the thought process, because of the way you look at the European, because of them always giving you their hand-me-downs, because of them always having what you didn't have to a certain degree, when you have the ability to get it, you're going to get it at all costs. So we have to stop and take a look at that. What motivates us to get what we're getting? Who told us that it was desirable? And where is this thought process coming from? And apparently we do see where it's coming from. Wearing other people's hand-me-downs. That also means when you wear people hand-me-downs, you put their spirit on you, because the spirit is in the clothes to a certain degree. And then again, that's spirituality, but it's within the clothes. So you're putting on the spirit of the oppressors that did not really much like you. And you're putting on their literal garments on your body, off of them. Now, tell me if that's not going to really mix you up in the mind. But anywho, did I ever go to church? Of course I did. Went right along with Mrs. Children. Had to set it in the back, but that wasn't nothing. So she has a whatever attitude, you know. My mama, she went to church too. Sometime the old folk used to get together in the quarter kitchen to shout and pray. That's where my mama get religion, not religion, religion. She kinda tender woman couldn't stand that preaching no longer. What about my pappy? That's something I ain't told you about. Well, you know, Uncle Stefan, he kind of overseer for some widow woman's. He mama's husband. He come see my mama and time he get ready, but I find out he ain't my pappy. I know that since when I was a little thing. I used to go over to Master Williams plantation and they tell me about myself. The folks over there, they used to say to me, who's your pappy? Who's your pappy? That's children talking, right? I just say, Tucky Buzzard, lay me and the son hatch me. That's the second time we hear. That's when the other young girl found out that the European and her mother told her that the buzzard laid her. So I guess this was what the slaves would say to deflect from having to answer the question, who's your daddy? She says, Tucky Buzzard lay me and the son hatch me. Ain't going about my business. Cause all the time they knows, and I knows too, that Martha Williams was my pappy. Again, it was taboo to say or to admit to this. I tell you know what, She says, I tell you something else. Got a brother living right on this here street. One of them tough doctors, you know, what pulls your teeth, cause he's white. But ain't no right here that I's his sister. 'Twouldn't ruin him. He's a nice man, though. Used to see my son and his wife lots of times. Yes, they's good friends. So her European half brother is a dentist and doesn't know that his Negress mulatto sister is up the street. This is the mixing. Whew. All right. Yes, they had overseers. Sometimes they call them stewards. Had colored ones too. Master Scott had white overseers. Good man though. But Master Nottingham, he had a black boss on his place. Can't remember his name. He ain't had to get no permission to come to our place. He just come and goes when he gets ready. Can I remember the war? Yes, indeed. Remember just like it was yesterday. Well, they had a stall down the corner from Master Plantation, and they all see me to stow from to buy things. Give me 1 second, please. I was all into thing. 1 second. Yeah, sorry about that. Had to make the thing stop ringing. All right, they used to send her to the store. Hold up. Bum, bum, bum. Okay. To store to buy things. Used to go down and them Yankees be sitting on the long road with the blue coats on. 'Twas right pretty sight, 'twas. But I was scared to death when I gets near 'em. I gets what I want from the store and fly past 'em. Them Yankees sure had their way. They went in all the white folks' houses, take the silver and anything big enough to carry out. Just ruining Mrs. Furniture. Get up on the table and just cut Kappa. Nasty things. Then the Yankees went round at night, take anything they wants to help them fight. 'Twas the Civil War. Got my Jake, cause I never knowed him then. He 12 years older than I was. Let me tell you about my Jake, how he did in the war. He a big man in the war. He drilled soldiers every day. First he be in one of them companies, Company C, I believe. Then he walk up to Sergeant Major in the 10th Regime. Jacob Goodwin was his name was. He say they all look up to him, respect him too. Say that sold over in the corner. That, oh, see the sword. Okay, that's the very sword he used in the war. And I kept it all these here years. No, the soldiers never did no fighting around here I know of, but plenty of them camped here or camped. There were soldiers everywhere. But also just join us. This is the Left Project. I'm all into it right now. My name is Amuna Yisrael. We're reading Rebels in the Wheat. We're reading Off the Chain, Miss Candace Goodwin. She's off the chain. And I'm going to finish it up right now. It says, my Jake, he's a handsome man he was. Remember how we first got together? We all was to church one Sunday, and Jake, he kept chiding up to me or siding up to me. And I was looking at him out of the corner of my eye till finally he got up and took hold of my hand. It was after the war. I was in the early teens then. They say I was the prettiest girl on the shore. And when Jake and me got married, everybody say, you sure make a pretty couple. Then old Scotch children, what I growed up with, no, none of them left now. Their last girl died here last year, and her daughter come way down here from up in Maryland to tell Aunt Candace about it. Wouldn't tell me face to face, tell me to my face, scared to excite me. But I heard her telling my child that about old Master Scott's children. Some of them, they still comes to see me, slip me some money now and then, and something to eat too. They're all mighty nice folks, them Scott. So she's still saying way after she was enslaved with them, way after, you know, slavery is finished. This is in the 1930s. She's still saying that they're nice folks. Used to play Indians and soldiers. The whites was the soldiers, and me and the rest of the slave boys was the Indians. Round and round the woods, hiding and whooping. Soon, soldiers see you, he shoot his wooden gun, and then you dead. Then that's how she wrote it too, D-A-I-D. I ain't making this stuff up. She said, then you dead. So you got to let him scalp you. So they're reenacting how these Europeans came and murked or killed the Indians. When the war come, we play Yankees and Confederates, cause the whites was always the Confederates. Take us black boys prisoners and make believe. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, that's correct. It's a woman. Her name is Mrs. Candace, but I don't know why she says the black boys. Take us black boys prisoners and make believe they was gonna cut our necks off because they got the idea from the fathers. Okay, I thought, and then it has a note. The above paragraph is attributed to Candace Goodwin in the manuscript, but the manuscript indicates that she's a boy. The theme of the paragraph, that is black and white children playing together, fits with Candace Goodwin's interview proper. It is not clear how her sex changed between interview and manuscript. So that one, because she was talking about Indians and chiefs and things of that nature, they put it in there. That they threw me off for a minute, but I had to read that. So that's Candace Goodwin. She admitted to stealing, bogarting, taking what she want. She never got hit. You know, she knew masters that wouldn't hit their enslaved people, and so for her, this was good. And so again, it's just giving us a look into the mind of those who were enslaved, what they thought, how they felt, what was important to them, what kept them smiling. You know, what was enough to push them to make them to run away. I want to thank everybody for joining us. My name is Amuna Yisrael. Up next is Miss Mildred Graves. This is a very interesting book. If you want to know more about it, the link is in the box. This is Weevils in the Wheat. It's definitely more like it, but this is a comprehensive one if you want to study Virginia and some of the practices in Virginia. Now, you might see something totally different if you read some narratives out of Louisiana, Mississippi, Georgia, all of these deep, deep sound places. This is Virginia, closer to the north than those places were. And people who were in Virginia, sure enough, didn't want to get sold down south, where things were much, much worse. So all of it is the institution of slavery. But as we're seeing here, there are so many shades of gray between slave and free that I think just hearing the voices are very important. So once again, if you're listening and you desire to read, just hit me up under this video on social media. I invite you to the hangout, and then you could definitely come in and read and let your voice be heard. And if you like what you're hearing, feel free to share so that we all could continue to grow together in this understanding and demystify the mystery of slavery. So once again, I thank everybody for tuning in. Tune in tonight as we read some chapters out of 30 Years a Slave from Bondage to Freedom with Lewis Hughes. Until next time, everybody have a blessed day. Shalom.